In the serene suburb of Maplewood, nestled among trees that painted the streets with a mosaic of red and gold each autumn, I found my sanctuary. This picturesque neighborhood, with its friendly faces and tranquil ambience, was where I had always envisioned raising a family. I am Daniel, and for over a decade, a modest house at the end of a cul-de-sac has been my home. The white picket fence and well-tended garden were symbols of the stability and contentment I had once believed unshakable. Each morning, I would wake up to the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant chirping of birds, feeling a profound sense of peace and belonging. Unfortunately, this is not a story of a happy ending. It is a tale of love lost and my struggle against forces beyond my control. It's my journey through the darkness, a stark reminder that even the most perfect lives can be shattered in an instant, leaving behind only fragments of what once was. Let's start with the beginning, where my seemingly perfect life began to unravel. The cracks in the facade were small at first, almost imperceptible, but they grew larger with each passing day until they were impossible to ignore. I work as a software engineer, a profession that demands much but allows me to provide comfortably for my family. My life has been a series of routines and rituals, each day a blend of work, family time, and personal hobbies. It's a life many would envy, filled with love and laughter. I would spend my days coding and troubleshooting, finding satisfaction in the challenges my job presented. In the evenings, I would return home to the warm embrace of my family, where the stresses of the day would melt away in the presence of my loved ones. I met Emma at a mutual friend's wedding. It was one of those storybook moments where the world seemed to slow down as our eyes met across the crowded room. Emma, with her warm smile and sparkling eyes, was the kind of person who lit up every space she entered. We danced that night, and soon, we were inseparable. Our courtship was a whirlwind of romance and shared dreams, culminating in a wedding that was the epitome of joy and hope. Our love was the kind that seemed destined, filled with late-night conversations, spontaneous adventures, and an unspoken understanding that we were meant to be together. Together, we built a life filled with love and laughter. Our two sons, Jack and Liam, were the center of our world, and I found profound satisfaction in the simple pleasures of fatherhood. Weekend barbecues, family vacations, and bedtime stories were the threads that wove our family together. Each milestone, from their first steps to their first days of school, brought us closer together and reinforced the bonds of love that held our family strong. We were a unit, each of us playing a crucial role in the harmony of our household. For years, our life was a picturesque portrait of suburban bliss. Emma and I complemented each other perfectly. Where I was meticulous and methodical, she was spontaneous and creative. We balanced the responsibilities of parenthood and household chores with an unspoken harmony. I often marveled at how fortunate I was, thinking of my family as the greatest achievement of my life. We found joy in the mundane, from cooking dinner together to cheering on our boys at their soccer games. Our home was a haven, a place where we could escape the world's chaos and find comfort in each other's presence. We lived a few years of joy until things started to change. The air in the house had been thick with tension for months, a palpable fog that clung to every room and corner, whispering discord into the silence. I had been aware of the gradual shift in my wife's demeanor, a change so subtle at first that I almost missed it. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the transformation became undeniable. It all started when she met Sarah, a new friend who seemed to bring a different energy into our lives. Sarah was vibrant and outgoing, her presence a stark contrast to the stability I had always cherished. Sarah was a whirlwind, a force of nature that swept into our lives with a smile that seemed too wide and eyes that held secrets. My wife, once the pillar of our household, began to change in ways that I found unsettling. Her request for me to do more around the house grew from casual suggestions to insistent demands. It wasn't that I minded helping. I had always shared in the chores, cooking, and taking care of our two boys. But there was an edge to her voice now, a cutting sharpness that spoke of deeper discontent. The warmth that had once characterized our interactions was replaced by a cold, unyielding tension that I couldn't quite understand. One night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I replayed the argument we had earlier. Her words echoed in my mind. each one a needle pricking at my sense of self. She had accused me of using her as a house slave, a term that felt as foreign and cruel as it sounded. The anger in her eyes was new, a fire that had been kindled by something, or someone, outside our marriage. I felt a growing sense of helplessness, unable to bridge the widening gap between us. The woman I loved was slipping away, and I didn't know how to stop it. The situation reached a boiling point when, in a moment of desperation, I decided to take on more around the house, hoping to appease her and restore the peace that had once been the foundation of our home. I reduced my hours at work, throwing myself into the domestic duties with a fervor that bordered on manic. For a brief period, it seemed to work. My wife was happier, or at least she appeared to be, as she basked in the glow of my efforts and boasted to Sarah about her newfound freedom. I clung to the hope that things would return to normal and that we could reclaim the happiness we once knew. But her happiness was short-lived. The demands increased, the expectations grew heavier, and the budget tighter. When I suggested she might get a part-time job to help with the expenses, her reaction was explosive. She called me a manipulative abuser, claiming that my actions were a form of financial control. The accusation stung, but more than that, it confused me. How had we come to this? I felt like I was walking on eggshells, constantly trying to avoid triggering another outburst. The home that had once been our sanctuary now felt like a battlefield. It was during a particularly heated argument that she let slip her darkest secret. Her eyes wild and voice trembling, she confessed to using drugs, substances she had been obtaining from Sarah. The revelation hit me like a sledgehammer, knocking the breath from my lungs. My wife, the mother of our children, was an addict. The knowledge was a heavy burden, one that I wasn't sure I was strong enough to carry. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and profound sadness. The woman I had vowed to love and protect was battling demons I hadn't even known existed. As she checked into rehab, the weight of our situation pressed down on me, suffocating in its intensity. I had to tell our sons, to explain why their mother would be away for a while. The task was daunting, the fear of breaking their innocent hearts almost too much to bear. But I knew I had no choice. They deserved the truth, no matter how painful. I struggled to find the right words, to explain something so complex and heartbreaking in a way they could understand. Their tears and questions cut through me, each one a reminder of the innocence that had been shattered. The days that followed were a blur of routine and worry. I tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy for the boys, but the cracks in our facade were growing wider with each passing day. Then came the call from the rehab center. My wife had tried to smuggle pills into the facility. The despair I felt was a dark, all-consuming thing. How could she do this? How could she risk everything? I felt a sense of hopelessness, as though I were watching our lives unravel from a distance, powerless to intervene. The final straw came when I discovered the videos. Sent by Sarah, they showed my wife in compromising positions with other men, a betrayal that cut deeper than any knife. The anger that surged through me was almost unbearable, a hot, boiling rage that threatened to consume everything in its path. I knew then that our marriage was over. The trust that had once been the foundation of our relationship was irreparably broken, and there was no going back. With a heavy heart, I began the process of divorce. Moving her belongings into the guest room, I felt a numbness settle over me. The woman I had loved, the woman who had once been my partner in all things, was now a stranger. Our home, once a sanctuary, had become a battleground, and I was weary of the fight. The love and joy that had once filled our lives were now overshadowed by pain and betrayal. I felt like a ghost, moving through the motions of daily life without truly living. When she overdosed in our guest room, the guilt was immediate and overwhelming. Had I pushed her too far? Should I have handled things differently? As I watched her lying in the hospital, comatose and fragile, I couldn't help but feel responsible. The love I had once felt for her was overshadowed by a deep, aching sorrow. I wondered if there was anything I could have done to prevent this, to save her from the path she had chosen. The weight of my regrets was almost too much to bear. Months passed, and though she eventually woke up, our relationship was beyond repair. She seemed better for a while, but the damage had been done. The final blow came when she overdosed again, this time at Sarah's house. The callousness of her so-called friend, who hesitated to call for help, sealed her fate. My wife was gone. The news of her death hit me like a tidal wave, drowning me in a sea of grief and confusion. I felt a profound sense of loss, not just for the woman she had become, but for the life we had once shared. In the days that followed, I found myself drowning in a sea of grief and regret. I took up smoking again, a habit I had long abandoned, seeking solace in the familiar burn of nicotine. My sons, too, struggled with their own forms of grief. The younger one talked about her often, their memories of bittersweet comfort. But my eldest son's anger was a constant reminder of the life we had lost. The house felt empty, a hollow echo of the vibrant home it had once been. I spent my nights staring at the ceiling, haunted by memories and what-ifs. As I stand here now, placing flowers on her grave, I can't help but reflect on the whirlwind that was our life together. The love, the pain, the betrayal, all of it had led us to this moment. And in the quiet of the cemetery, surrounded by the echoes of the past, I can almost hear her voice, a whisper on the wind, reminding me of the life we once shared. The journey through the darkness had been long and harrowing, but it had also taught me the resilience of the human spirit. Though the pain of loss would never fully fade, I found a sliver of hope in the memories of happier times, a reminder that love endures even in the face of unimaginable sorrow.